At 6:21 in the morning, a Russian radar operator saw 12 targets rise on his screen. They looked like cruise missiles. They moved like cruise missiles. And they triggered the exact kind of panic cruise missiles are supposed to trigger. Within minutes, Russian air defense crews were launching multi-million-dollar interceptors. Command posts were escalating alarms. Fighters were being scrambled. Entire sectors were locking down for what looked like a major Ukrainian strike deep inside Russian territory. But the real attack wasn't the one on the screen, because those missiles were fake, plastic, foam, cheap decoys. And while Russia was firing at ghosts, the real drones were already slipping through the gap, heading for a target Moscow believed was untouchable. This wasn't just a strike, it was a trap, and Russia walked straight into it. Modern war is not always won by whoever has the biggest missile. Sometimes it's won by whoever can make the other side react first, and react wrong. That was the logic behind this operation. Ukraine did not begin by sending its best strike drone straight at the target. It began by attacking something far more important, the defender's judgment. Before sunrise, the first wave lifted off. Not heavy explosives, not expensive munitions, decoys. Their mission was simple: get detected, look dangerous, force a response, and the response came exactly as planned. Because when 12 missile-sized contacts appear on your radar, heading deeper into your country, you don't get rewarded for staying calm and philosophical. You fire, or you risk being the commander who let the strike through. That pressure is a weapon. That fear is a weapon. And on that morning, Russian air defense reacted exactly the way Ukraine needed it to. Within minutes, the trap was already working. Missiles were being wasted, fighters were being redirected, weapons hold orders were spreading across the sector, and below all of that noise, far lower than the fake threats everyone was tracking, the real strike drones were already moving through the corridor the decoys had just opened. The first wave was never meant to destroy the target. It was meant to blind the system protecting it. And it worked. The first Russian warning came just after dawn. A radar operator near Bryansk picked up faint returns at the edge of his coverage. Then the picture sharpened. 12 contacts, low altitude, tight spacing, steady speed, large signatures. He sent the data up the chain. Minutes later, a Buk M2 battery commander received the picture. 12 confirmed tracks moving northeast at roughly 160 kilometers per hour. Low enough to resemble terrain-following threats. Large enough to look serious? Too many to ignore. His launcher had 4 ready missiles. That's when the math turned ugly. 12 targets, 4 shots, several minutes to reload. If these were real cruise missiles, hesitation could be catastrophic. If they were decoys, firing would still be easier to justify than letting them pass. In air defense, wasting ammunition is survivable. Letting a real strike through is not. So, he fired. 2 missiles left the rails, then 2 more. Each intercept looked clean. One target after another vanished from the radar picture. To the Russian crew, it was a successful engagement. But those weren't cruise missiles. They were tiny Ukrainian decoys built from foam and plastic, each carrying the one device that made the entire illusion possible: a Lundberg lens. That lens changed the radar picture. A normal small drone returns a weak signal. A drone fitted with a Lundberg lens can reflect radar energy back in a way that makes it appear much larger than it really is. On a screen, something weighing less than 9 kilograms can suddenly look like a cruise missile-sized threat. So Russia did not shoot at what was physically there. It shot at the image it had been manipulated into seeing, and that difference mattered. As the Buk battery reloaded, the surviving decoys kept moving. Another battery tracked them, but they stayed outside engagement range. A longer range system tried to lock them, but the targets were too low and too tangled in terrain clutter for a clean firing solution. Now the decision moved higher. The regional duty officer had 2 bad options. He could keep throwing expensive surface-to-air missiles at weak solutions and hope. Or he could scramble fighters. He chose fighters, and that was the moment the real operation paid off. Because once Russian Su-35s entered the engagement zone, the doctrine kicked in. Ground-based batteries across the sector received weapons hold instructions to reduce the risk of friendly fire. Fire control radars cooled. Engagement authority tightened. The network became slower, more cautious, more fragmented. That was the opening. Because while everyone was focused on the fake targets higher up, The real Ukrainian strike package was flying much lower, around 200 meters, sometimes lower. Quiet, dark, hidden in the seams of radar coverage while the defense network was busy chasing decoys. The fake attack bent the shield. The real attack slipped through the crack, and the real drone still had hundreds of kilometers left to fly. This is what made the operation dangerous. It wasn't just about decoys, it was also about navigation. Long-range drones often rely on GPS, and GPS can be jammed or spoofed. Feed a drone false coordinates, and you can make it miss without firing a single shot. So these drones appear to have used terrain-based navigation instead. They flew by recognizing the world below them: roads, rivers, ridgelines, field boundaries, tree lines, intersections. Their cameras compared the live ground image to preloaded terrain maps and corrected course from that. No radio signal to jam. No external link to intercept, just onboard software trying to match reality to memory at high speed. It was clever, but it wasn't perfect. Terrain changes, water levels rise, snow alters the visual pattern, construction changes the map. And during the mission, those weaknesses started to hurt. One drone encountered a navigation mismatch when the terrain below no longer matched its stored imagery. What should have been farmland had become a partially frozen reservoir. The system hesitated, recalculated, corrected late, drifted off route, and crossed into a Tor battery's detection zone. Shot down. Another drone suffered engine trouble after hours at heavy throttle. Fuel consumption increased. Range collapsed. It died short of the target. A third flew too close to a Panzer escorting a convoy. Destroyed. Now the mission was losing aircraft, but it was never designed around perfection. It was designed around survival by numbers. Lose some, keep enough. Reach the target anyway. And enough drones survived. The rest adjusted their routes around the defenses that had just revealed themselves and kept going. Low, silent, ruthless. Their path had likely been studied for weeks. Dead ground, radar seams, terrain masking, predictable doctrine, reaction windows. Then the target appeared. The 100th Arsenal. A sprawling ammunition depot deep inside Russian territory. Bunkers, warehouses, rail sidings, loading zones, forest cover. The kind of place built on one arrogant assumption: distance equals safety. That assumption was about to burn. As the surviving drones approached, their onboard cameras captured the facility in full. Trucks moving between bunkers, forklifts handling cargo. Active loading operations. And on one rail siding, oversized crates that did not match standard Russian inventory. That detail would matter later. Then the defending Panzer battery picked up the first inbound drone. At first, it looked manageable. One target, then a second, then a third, all coming from different directions. That changed the geometry instantly. A point defense system is deadly against one incoming drone, but multiple low-altitude threats from several vectors create a timing nightmare. Slew, lock, fire, shift, reacquire, fire again. Every second spent on one target gives another target more distance. The Panzer killed the first drone, then the second. But while its guns were locked in one direction, more drones were already coming in from another, using terrain and timing to stay hidden until the last possible second. By the time the operator shifted again, the defense was behind. One damaged drone was still flying, another was diving, and then the arsenal started exploding. The first impact hit a storage bunker, the second struck a warehouse, another slammed into a loading area, and one of the final drones crashed into the rail siding with those oversized non-Cyrillic crates. That blast was different, brighter, hotter, sharper. Then the chain reaction began. Stored shells started cooking off, propellant ignited. Secondary explosions rolled across the facility. Warheads detonated in sequence. Fire spread through the depot. The sound carried for kilometers. Later assessments suggested those strange crates contained North Korean KN-23 ballistic missiles. Foreign-supplied weapons stored at a depot Russian planners likely assumed Ukraine could never be able to reach. But Ukraine reached it, and that is why this operation mattered far beyond the physical destruction. Yes, it hit ammunition. Yes, it damaged a major depot. But the deeper effect was psychological. Russia's air defense network had not simply been attacked. It had been manipulated. Cheap decoys forced expensive responses. A predictable doctrine created a gap. and that gap was enough to let the real strike package through. That is the real story here. Not missile versus missile, mind versus system. Because now every Russian radar operator has a new problem. The next time missile-sized tracks appear on the screen, are they real? If you fire, are you wasting millions on foam? If you wait, are you letting the real attack through? If you scramble fighters, are you opening another corridor somewhere else? That kind of uncertainty is poison in an air defense network. It slows decisions, it destroys confidence, it turns every radar contact into a question mark. And in modern war, question marks kill. So, look at what actually happened. A handful of cheap decoys lit up Russian radar screens. A Buk battery emptied its launcher. Other systems got dragged into bad geometry. Su-35S were pushed into the fight. Weapons hold orders cooled the sector. And beneath all of that chaos, the real strike package crossed the line that mattered. That is what modern drone warfare looks like now. Not just firepower, manipulation, not just destruction, misdirection. Make the enemy look up, hit him low, make him spend millions, then burn the target anyway. That's not just a successful strike, that's control over the enemy's decisions. And if a few kilos of foam and plastic can punch a hole through a major air defense network, how many safe targets were never safe at all?